Welcome, viewers. Welcome to another episode from Anything About Everything. Today, I have Dhanasree with me. Just to give a small intro, or why I am intrigued by her is definitely like we've been friends for 3 years, 2 years probably, and then I love talking to her. I enjoy her conversations. And also, like one of the conversations, they slipped that she's writing a book, and the idea was amazing. So I knew that I can pick her brains, like, how is she preparing to write a book, and she's almost in the verge of finishing it. And yeah, she's working. She's also taking her master's program, and she's doing this. Someone who inspires me to do a lot of things. So yeah, Dhanushree, welcome to the show, and thanks for making this happen.
No, thank you so much for having me here.
Awesome. So, I don't want to start off first with the book thing, but I want to start like you were born in India and then
Yeah,
you moved to US when you were
4.
four. How was it growing up here in US?
I think a lot of people have you heard the term like ABCD?
Yeah.
So
Can you say that?
so honestly,
American born confused lady.
yes. Yes. So I feel like I was always a ABCD too, but the spectrum where I was versus my brother who was born here was so different. I don't know if it's like some people say there's something with the soil you're born into. Like I feel like I was so much more like Indianized than my brother, who's more Americanized than I am.
You're
And
serious?
yeah, and like I started going to school here in kindergarten. Like I came here when I was 4, so it wasn't that much of a huge difference, but the way he thinks about certain things, the way I think about certain things, like, it's so completely different, and I feel like I can speak the language way better than he can. Like, in those first 4 years, I was surrounded by so many, like, family you know how when you have a baby in India, it's like a whole community comes to help the child, like, grow the child, and I was, so in my dad's side of the family, I'm the only girl, and everyone else has 2 boys. And there's like my dad has like uh 10 siblings. So I was one of those like I don't know if you know the word chelam,
Mm.
but
No, what is it?
or it's like in Tamil, it means like to give so much affection, like overflowing affection.
Mhm.
So because I was the first, like only girl child in that side of the family, I grew up with like 12, 15 people all the time, like picking me and like just giving me so much attention and affection. And I think all of that has to play a part in why, even though I've lived here so long, I'm more Indianized than my brother, and I even said, "I think you're more Americanized than I am."
Yeah, I came here 9 years ago, and she thinks like I'm more Americanized than she is.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how was schooling here? Because when in India, like we have a different schooling system. How was schooling here? Like when we saw like this is what again, most of my knowledge about schools here come from movies. Excuse me, audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here I see like a lot of bullying happen just because you're a different different race. But in India, like I studied in an international school and we had people from Germany, we had people from North Korea, South Korea. We always thought they're cool and we wanted to hang out more with them.
Yeah.
I don't think the case was like that here. Like, can you speak more about that?
So I don't know if my like experience applies to everyone here, but when my parents came here, we weren't like people think when you come to America, it's like a golden country where you're just flowing with money
Yeah.
and like it's like everyone has a dream of coming here, but the struggles like my parents had to work really hard, and most of the time we lived in like poor neighborhoods until about high school was like when my parents like settled down, and then that's when like we were like because we only had my dad was working and we my brother was premature, so we had a lot of like hospital bills to pay because they had to keep him in an incubator and stuff. So all of that, like we lived in like very poor neighborhoods for until high school. So during those times, I was like probably one of the few Indians at that school. And I did face a lot of like bullying. And the bullying was like a lot of people like noticing differences in how I looked. It was like all about appearance. Like, and sometimes it stemmed from jealousy. Like when you're young, like that person has better hair than you, or that I don't know if it was about skin color. It was mostly about just like if someone's prettier or someone was fatter or something like that. It was like those things where I felt very like different, and also I couldn't make like strong connections because I didn't have anyone that I could connect with. No one understood that I was an immigrant and what like my parents worked here. Some people like were very like they got things like very like spoon fed to them here. So it was very hard for me to connect with. But then when I moved to high school, that's when we went to like a well neighborhood, like a well educated place where there was more Indians. And that's when I could find like my it wasn't like you're Indian, I'm Indian, like we connect. It was more like I had a tribe of people who valued the same things that I did. And when you're younger, like a lot of people here actually, if you're Indian, like a lot of things they look at is that school area good for my child to go to?
Mm,
That's why you don't see a lot of Indians in poor neighborhoods because they know that the school there is not good. And that is very, very true in America. Like the education system might be great, like for colleges and stuff, like Harvard and they're top-notch colleges.
MIT, yeah.
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 But if you look state by state, there's some states where their literacy rate is like so low, like their children can't even read. And
Mm.
you'd be surprised. Like even kids in India and like all over the place can read.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. For me, when I think about the school system, right? Like I love the school system, but with this like this neighborhood has better school system, so you gotta live here. So I think it's like kind of it's a snowball effect sometimes I feel because like that drives up the real estate of that area and
Yeah.
it just brings in more people and then like people who are not well to do have to stay far off.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't know where to find. I have no solution or nothing like that. It's just I think a lot about that.
It's crazy. There's this thing called gerrymandering
Mm.
where like as I said, we had to move to a higher rich area in order to get into a better school. So if you don't have the money to go into that area, like you can't get a better like
Education.
education, and then that affects you. It is a
It's just
snowball.
yeah,
Yeah. And
right.
you can't get a better job and you can't
Exactly.
go.
When I was in college, I had a friend. Her mom was visiting her, so I was trying to get her a space for like couple months, for three
Yeah.
months when her mom was visiting because she had roommates and she didn't want.
Mhm.
So then one of my friend, I don't want to drop the name here,
Yeah.
but yeah, she first agreed to rent the space out, and then she pulled back saying, "Oh no, because when you Indians cook, the whole house smells like that, and the curtain smells like that,
Yeah.
and my couch smells like that, so I don't want
Yeah.
to rent it to you guys." And I've heard a couple places like that where they wanted to sublease, and just because you're like our curry and our food gets mixed with the thing, and they said no. How was that? How was that experience when you were going to school when you opened the tiffin box? Was it similar?
I have such I've had such a bad experience. Like, I'll tell you 2 examples. One time, I bought Maggi noodles, and you know what? It's like ramen, Indian style noodles, but it's called Maggi,
Right.
right? And then there was a girl whose name was Maggie. And then she got really offended that I was calling the noodles, like, Maggi noodles, and I was, like, trying to explain it to her, like, "That's what it's called."
And then
Yeah, and she was like, "No, you're just, like, making fun of me." And I was like, "No, that's really what it is." And then there was another experience where I had mixed yogurt, like, you know, you mix yogurt, plain yogurt and rice, and
yogurt
with
rice.
yeah, yogurt, right? It's such a common thing to do, but when you're the only Asian Indian kid and everyone around you is, like, white or African American, and you open your lunchbox and it's, like, yogurt and rice, it's, like, you're, like, targeted. You're, like they're gonna come for you, and unless you have a very strong personality to be, like,
What's that?
stand up at that age, like, to stand up for, "Okay, this is, like, my food, and it's amazing, and even if you don't like it, I like it." I don't think at that age, it's just I couldn't stand up for myself like that. Even sometimes now I have, like, in trauma when I, take Indian food somewhere, I'm like, "Okay, I have to go sit somewhere where no one can smell it," or, like, people think it's, like, smells
Wow,
bad. It's yeah, it
for
just
real. Wow. When you think about it, that's crazy.
but in India, you guys, like, could take whatever you
Yeah,
wanted,
of
and
course. Yeah.
people would just be like Yeah, that is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Mhm.
I so it's funny. Talking about food, so one of my cousin, he lives in Baltimore, and him and I were talking, and I asked him, like, he was born and raised here, and
Okay.
he's married to my sister, who was born and raised here, my cousin's sister.
Yeah.
So while we were talking, I think my sister was out for work, and I asked him, like, how come you married to an Indian, you were born and
Yeah.
raised here and everything. We spoke for, but he gave me a very subtle thing. He's like, Raghu, when I have to go make chapatis, like, I
Yeah.
can tell I am going making chapatis. That's And I'm like, in my, I couldn't tell him because
Yeah.
it was third time we meeting or fourth time we meeting him. I'm like, in my head, it was like, wow,
What are you talking about?
yeah, what do you do? That's such a lame example. Like, you're telling I want to make chapati, so you don't want to give example. That's why you married an Indian. That doesn't seem right to me. And then I'm like, okay, fast forward 4 years later, I'm working at K4
K4 is in India or here?
here,
Here, okay,
here
okay.
after my college. So every day I used to come back home for lunch,
Yeah.
and my roommate or my friend used to cook. So we used
Mhm.
to figure out and we used to cook. And of course, Indian food like pisi bele baat, puliogre, or and proper Indian food, right?
Yeah.
And when I go back to office, and everybody used to ask, "Oh, Raghu, like when I'm walking in the cabin, Raghu, what did you have for lunch?"
Yeah.
And then it used to be like two, three people asking me because, oh, I should tell like, oh, I had lemon, like puliogre for lunch. And they should
Yeah.
be like, what is it? It's like, I'm like, it's a tamarind rice where you do this.
Yeah.
Then you explain, they go on internet, they see, oh, that's nice. And then you do that two, three times. And then the same thing next day happened. The same thing happened fourth day. When after a while, I just started saying I had chicken sandwich. Then I was reminded of Sandesh who told me the same thing
Chapatis.
about chapatis.
Yeah. It's not that you don't want to explain it to them,
Yeah.
but it's just a different level of when they already know. It's like a simple thing,
Yeah, it's a
right?
simple thing. Yeah, it's funny. Anyways, switching gears, you told me that you did a 10-day silent meditation thing. Like,
Yes.
that was like, that always intrigued me, and that's one of the things that I really want to do.
Yeah.
How was your experience, and like what did you actually do, and why did you let me break this into this. Like, what made you do it,
Mhm.
and then how was your experience?
So I had two reasons to do it. One was so Vipassana camp, 10-day silent camp, is basically a camp where 10 days you're not allowed to talk to anyone other than the person that's teaching you the meditation. Like you can ask them questions and you don't have your phone or your any distractions like a journal. You don't have anything.
You don't even have books to read, nothing.
No, because they what they want to do is they think 10 days is very short amount of time to eliminate all the distractions in your life in order to concentrate on the inside. So, we're talking right now, right? Like my brain is registering that you're talking to me, I'm talking to you. It's thinking about that. But in this camp, when you don't have all these distractions, like all you have is your thoughts, and that's what you want to like narrow down and focus on. So it's not about eliminating your thoughts or anything like that, but they want to teach you like it's I feel like I don't know if their purpose is what my purpose was, but if found helped me find peace. Like I feel like my brain talks a lot, right? If you watch TV, you're like thinking about what that person is wearing. Like there's so many thoughts you were thinking of, and it's because you turned on the TV. I felt like my brain ran out of thoughts to think about during that period of time. And the reason I started doing it is because I have this thing called pure OCD. So I think a lot, and it off like sometimes I have phases where the thoughts are controlling me, kind of. Because of that, that's why I wanted to explore this and see if it could help me. And then also I heard they only feed you twice, so I thought I would lose weight. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and try to lose weight, and then also try to work on myself. And I thought that's what would happen. But surprisingly enough, you don't lose weight by just having 2 meals a day because you don't do any exercise. Like they just feed they don't give you dinner because they want to also like make you focus more on your brain, and if you're fasting it also helps you concentrate.
Hmm.
And so that was a lot of what we did. We meditated like 3 to 6 hours a day.
3 to 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and afterwards I felt like I was like free of my thoughts. For that lasted for a few months, and I wish I had continued doing it, but then when like the real world comes in, you start losing consistent practice and the
So
thing.
do they this was in US, correct?
Yes, they have it
And
worldwide though.
how old were you when you did this?
Either 20 or 21.
Okay. So you did that 10-day scam,
Yeah.
and do they tell you like when you go back, for the lack of a better word, when you go back to the real world, what do you have to do to maintain this level of focus and stuff? Like, do they tell you what to do?
Yes, they give you you have to do 2 hours a day. So, like, 1 session in the morning and 1 session in the evening, but it's not as intense as the 10-day period is. And they even have 30-day, like, they have a whole month where people
Like,
do it.
oh, silence and meditate.
Silence and meditating. And I didn't experience this because I don't think I feel like if I had gone the second time, I might have, because you have different levels of effort you put in, and the amount of effort you put in is what you get back. So one person did it, and he was like super like intense into it, and he did so it's hard to meditate, right? And for me, like, I've never done that many hours, but some people are able to just like hone into that one thing and do it. And he was able to feel outer body experience, and he could see himself as a third person. Like, some people are able to feel that like out of body experience from this kind of meditation.
Wow,
Mhm.
sounds pretty intense.
But it's only like how much you put in. And at that time, like, I went in there for like weight loss, and I was like, okay, if it helps my OCD, it might be good too. So I didn't go it with like full force, full like intention.
Intention.
Mhm.
I mean, it sounds very difficult for me. Do people like quit and come back, and people say like I'm not able to do this? Like, how do they provide you that kind of support too when you're not able to like cope with that? Like,
So my brother like did it too, and then after a few days, he felt like he couldn't do it, and he's way young. He was 18. They tried to help you. Like, you can talk to your coach and say like whatever you're going through.
anxiety,
Yeah,
like,
they can
yeah,
help you with
problem.
that. But after a certain point where you feel like I need to leave, then they'll of course let you leave.
Hmm.
Like, there was few people there that had gone to prison for something, and they came to the camp, and they felt like they were feeling like whatever they felt in prison back, because your worst fears come out during this period of time, but they don't want you to be scared of your fears, but they want you to like,
Face it.
yeah, like if you've had past trauma and stuff, like all of that resurfaces because you don't have your phone to distract you from all your unwanted thoughts and unwanted experiences. So those people, they felt their prison trauma was coming back, and they couldn't handle it, and they didn't want to like continue. And so they're like, yes, of course you can leave. Yeah.
For me, it's just mind blowing that how difficult it is to
Yeah.
keep quiet.
Yeah.
It's so difficult. Like, what I'm reminded of a quote. It says like a person's like 80% of the problem is solved if he just learns
Be
how to sit
quiet.
quiet, how
Mm-hmm.
to sit quietly without any distractions. Well, interesting. I would really want to try it. Yeah, I would really want to try it,
Mm-hmm.
but my work is so busy, and I always have to be around it. So probably I'll plan it around, and I really want to do. I'll do the 10 days one.
Yeah, because you have 3 days once after you do the 10 days, but they think 10 days is way too short of amount of time for anyone to like fully get it. So they're like, we need
10 days.
everyone 10 days, and then you can do 3-day camps, or you can volunteer. Like, my whole family has done it, and my father can now volunteer at the place and help cook, because the cooks and everyone is volunteers,
Hmm.
and the whole thing is donation based. So they're not expecting like thousands of dollars from you, but whatever you felt you gained from this experience, they ask you to donate it so someone else can experience it.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's a great cause. And is there a lot of spots in US, or it's
The one I went to was in Jessup, Georgia, but there I think there's like 20 locations in US.
really? Is there any in Florida?
No.
None in Florida?
No, but it's also in all around the world. Like,
All
there's one in Spain where people said the scenery and the camp, it was just like so like majestical, because it was like right near a mountain or something.
oh
And
wow.
yeah, so
That's
I would love to go to Spain and do that. But and there's even one in Chennai, but I think the ones in Chennai are a little, they're all the same, I think, but I guess the food changes based on where you go.
Okay.
Yeah, and the cost is the same. Like, yeah, it's all donation based.
I wanted to really talk about your book writing
Yeah.
experience. Why did you choose to write the book? What instigated you to write the book?
So at that time, well, I still have this friend. Like, she was like really close to me. She's in Germany right now, but her name is Chalisa, and she was always into trying new things. And at that age, like I was in high school too. I think beginning of high school to first or second year of undergrad, and me and her would hang out a lot, and I she like inspired me to try acting. So that's where it first started. Like, I had no intentions of writing a book. Like, I honestly hate writing. Like, I think if you ask a lot of American Indians, like their worst subject in school is English. Like, they're good at math and science, but English is like a very sore subject. And I hated writing as well. But we first started off, me and her, just like she would ask me to be on skits and stuff with her, and then I tried out for. I even went to acting classes. So
Oh, I
yeah,
didn't know about this.
yeah,
How long did you do that?
like this is really bad, but I did it for like a month.
Mm-hmm.
I also auditioned for that show called Never Have I Ever, like with the
Oh,
yeah, with the
uh-huh.
Indian person. But so at that time I wanted to try new things, and the thing difference about India versus here is actors in India have to be like picture perfect, beautiful people, right? Like, as women.
Mhm.
But here it's more about like the skill you have. You can see in like The Office, like Mindy Kaling became such a good actress because of the skill, and I think she is beautiful too, but in India, like, that's not normal beautiful. Like, dark skin, curvier is not what is considered picture perfect. So I was like, I could have this is like the country of dreams, right? So I could try and just explore it. And if I didn't like it, then I didn't like it. But I was doing that, and then I auditioned for Never Have I Ever. And after that, I was like, okay, I will just like write my own book. Like, I have so much love stories in my head. I'll just like write my own book. And at the time, my friend was also writing a book. So I think almost every week we met like 2 or 3 times at Dunkin' Donuts, and me and her would sit across the table and just have writing sessions, and then we would talk about our book, and that made it so interesting for me because we were both learning at the same time, and I have never ever written a book, never even thought about writing a book, so I had no idea what I was doing, and she had more idea, but I was learning a lot from her, she was learning a lot from me. We talked about our characters, like how our characters are going to develop. She asked me very important questions, and that helped my character grow and her character grow. We both of us, I felt like, were writing two books because I was hearing her story and then she was hearing mine, and we had such great like dynamic, and that's where my whole book writing like started. And after me and her were like writing, we wrote like every week, and I wrote actually like one full book. But
Oh,
yes,
nice.
but it's not what you think it is, because book writing is like so not hard, but when you've never been like done it before, you learn so much from scratch. Like, you as a director, like, you on your first movie, you had to learn so many things, right? So the same way when I was writing a book, like, the first book I wrote is probably crap, like, but I finished through it and I know what to do in my second book. So, and I learned everything off of like YouTube and reading stuff. Like, it was my passion project for like this was like for two this was almost for half my undergrad, where this is what I was doing. I was doing my undergrad, but on the side I was like, I want to learn about this and write about this.
Got it. So
Mhm.
that's how you started writing.
Yeah.
And can you give a gist about your first book, what the story was?
Okay, so I kind of like, in retrospect, this happened way before uh the show Never Have I Ever had come out, but it's basically about a brown girl, but she is in love with a American in high school. And the show is not the show.
Mhm. The
the,
book.
the book is basically about a love story about a Tamil girl and an American falling in love, but he's secretly a spy.
The guy?
The guy is a spy, and she secretly this let me tell you, it's out of a while. It's like a crazy story. So she had like superpowers. She and her twin sisters had superpowers, and he was pretending to fall in love with her because he like they were best friends for a long time, but he was actually spying on he was a British spy. And he was trying to like take her superpowers or whatever, and they all like traveled to India too, and then it was a whole bunch of ideas, like all the things I wanted. Like I had so much like culture in it, like Indian culture in it, and then it was like a love story, and then there was also this like British spy, and there's a lot of things. And so after I wrote that, I was like, okay, this book is all over the place. I don't know what to do with it, but my friend, like, I remember her telling me, like, "You actually produce something, like, it wasn't just a thought, like, you just wasn't like, 'I'm gonna write a book,' like, you actually made something, and you should be proud of that, even though it may never be published, no one will ever read it, like, it's actually a tangible item that you can say that you can use for your next one."
Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
intellectual property.
Yeah.
The listening to you speak is amazing. One thing is because like someone who wants to start writing or someone who wants to get into writing, like they can get a lot of insights, right? Like
Mhm.
someone who just went through the process,
Yeah.
just learned it, and they have one like a passion copy where they have all their intellectual dump there,
Mhm.
and then like they're getting ready for another book where they can use whatever they learned and produce something. So I want to pick your brain more on that.
Yeah.
So for me, like it helps me, and anything I understand is basically by relating it, right,
Mhm.
to something that I already know or something that already happened.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to understand book writing process with my screenplay writing process.
Yeah.
So when I write when I get an idea of a one liner, I divide it into like three act structure, and then I give it three act structure. Then I follow the three act structure. Then I divide the three act structure into scenes. Like the first act is
Save the cat, basically.
exactly right,
Yes.
and then I go and figure out characters and everything. So can you in this way in detail elaborate like how do you get ready to write a book? Like can you summarize that your experience to me?
So I had like a wall where I had sticky notes of every single thing. Like these few chapters were gonna be leading up to the climax, or these few chapters were gonna be my resolution, and then this was like the midpoint. You know, those few in Save the Cat, it has like I never knew Save the Cat existed. I was so profound when I found that, oh, like there is actually a structure that most writers use, or most even screenplay
Yep.
movies use. Like that blew my mind because you could fit almost not everything. Some movies are the out of the box, but 90-80% of the movies fit into that. So when I found that, like I was like, I didn't even know that like at the beginning. So as I said, like a lot of my studying, not studying, but a lot of my learning came from YouTube and things like that. And you slowly piece it together. And it was like, I would say the learning process was like almost 2 years. And then when I finally had an idea, like for my next book, the books that I actually wanted to be published, I like took a whole wall and I wrote down in sticky notes, like each single chapter, what was going to happen in this chapter, how many like what was the word count of the entire book, like
Are you serious?
mhm,
Word count. Okay.
the word count, the out like it's just like a whole outline. Like for writing, it's more planning than executing. Like planning is like, I mean, you do have to write, and with now ChatGPT, I'm not sure how that is, but if you want it in your own words, your own style, like you still have to write it. You can't just ChatGPT it, but yeah, I had like a 75,000 word count. Like that was what I was aiming for. And then you have to have the genre. Like you can't just write a book and say it's after it's written, you can't say it's this genre. You can do that, but you have to like there's certain things that happen in each genre, like adult contemporary.
Mhm.
I didn't even know what that word meant. So I had to look up all these genres, and I was like, where does my idea fit in?
Mm.
Where do I want it to be? Like, what is my target audience? So there's a lot of planning. before you write.
So
Yeah.
if I'm understanding, first you get the idea and then you try to like in your head figure out chapters
Mm.
and then see how the story flows through the chapters. Correct? In
Yes, and then there's also the characters.
Okay.
So the characters, you don't want to like boring character, right? Like no one has ever in a TV show or anything, like you've never seen a character that was just like there.
Yeah.
They have either a character arc or their role is like important. So you have to weave in every single thing that happens. Like I would write what like in that chapter if there was going to be character development growth in that chapter for my main character or her side character or the villain, the antagonist. So I had to write all those things down and then like actually start writing.
Got it. Got it. So it's the chapters and then the characters and then the character development of
Yes.
each character, like
Yes.
their background, what are they gonna do, like
Yeah.
so that you can plan like the chapters ahead.
Yes.
Interesting. It's I feel like it's pretty similar to like how I write the screenplay, right? I kind of see a lot of similarities there. And in movies, sometimes like when I write a screenplay, like il- I have a genre in mind, but also it's like I try to like shove in few characters. Like I need a comedy element here because the story flatlined here. I need either a spike in like action or a spike in comedy. So I try to fit in there. Does the same thing happen even with the
Yes.
books? You do?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, some chapters here are really boring. Like,
Hmm.
let me add a plot twist.
Got it.
Like, I am writing the book for me, but I also want it to be something that other people can find interesting as much as I do.
Hmm.
And I eventually want at least a book of mine to be a movie. Like that was my end goal. And I read somewhere where it said you can have like ideas are cheap. You can have so many ideas, but if you don't have anything tangible to it, like if you don't have you can it's more easier to have a book fully written and give it to a director and ask them to make it into a movie versus you saying like I have this great idea, like can you just make it into a movie? Like that's not going to happen. Or you have to write a what is it called, transcript? No.
Screenplay.
Yeah, screenplay. Like you have to write a screenplay and then you can like try to
Yeah.
sell it. But I found myself more interested in writing the book and then wanting it to get turned into a movie. A lot of movies are like that. They're from books.
Yeah, yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of movies like
Yeah.
Dune is from a book, Harry Potter
Yeah.
from a book.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might be a lot to ask, but I would love to direct your movie.
Oh,
Like I want the first dibs on it.
I
Yeah.
my crazy British spy. You ever
You're a good friend of mine, so I'll have some creative leeway there. But I would like to call dibs on the books. Yeah,
I would love to.
yeah,
I would love
it'll be
to.
fun. So what is your goal with writing this book?
So my book takes place in high school. I feel like I not my target audience wasn't for high schoolers because a lot of people read in high school. I don't know if that's true anymore,
Mhm.
but I really love those like teenage rom-coms.
Okay.
And if you've seen in Netflix, like there's this show called To All the Boys I've Loved Before, and then um it's like very like um I don't want to say girly, but it's a lot of like teenage girl centric like rom-coms. And my target audience is like it's a adult fiction
Mhm.
contemporary book.
What is adult fiction contemporary? I don't
So
know what that is.
adult fiction is like teenagers. They just call them
Oh, okay.
they're
That
not fully
the
young
sound is very
adult.
misleading.
Sorry, young adult.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're not adult yet, so they're like young
Young
adults.
adults.
Yeah.
So that is your target audience, and you wanna cater to that
Yeah.
audience where, like, they have more relatable characters, they have more
Mhm.
relatable stories. Like that's
Yes.
what you wanna do. Awesome, awesome. That's a nice thing. So yeah, I mean, like I said, like for someone who wants to newly get into writing, I think like your process of breaking down would have definitely helped them. Yeah. Um.
I would say for anyone who wants to start writing or has an idea, like they it's it the process is not okay, so I would spend a lot of time planning it out. And then actually, there's one like great piece of advice where, like for my first book, I just wrote every day. Even though it sounded terrible, I was like my worst critic. I'd be like, this part, this chapter is terrible. No one's gonna read my book. Like, what am I doing this for? I've wasted like 50 hours of my life trying to do this. Like, you will have all of these thoughts, but then you should still do it. And then you can always, like, writing is to rewrite. To write is to rewrite, and you can rewrite it once you have something down. But if you're like, I want to write this and I want to write this, and you never do anything about it, there's nothing going to be there, you know?
Interesting. And I wanted to ask something in relate. Yeah. Do you have any materials or anything that helped you a lot that you could share it with the audience?
So the book, Save the Cat,
Hmm.
that is the best book for any beginners who want to start writing, who have no idea where to start. Like, that book gives you such a good structure, and it kind of even breaks it down like chapter to chapter, like what needs to happen. And if you have a strong plot and strong characters, and you can improve your writing, and you like, there's even people called ghostwriters where you tell them your idea and they will write the book for you if you have like what you want.
Mm.
So if you have amazing idea and you just feel like you can't write, you could do it that way, but it's very expensive. And when it's done, you won't feel, even though it is yours, you won't feel like you put in the work for it.
Right.
So I think if you're just starting out, you should just write every
Right.
day.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, I've read Save the Cat like 2 or 3 times
Yeah.
end to end, but this might be coming of lack of knowledge, but isn't Save the Cat more for like screenplay writing than book writing?
So there's a book. They took that screenplay writing and they made it into what how like a book version.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I never read
The screenplay writing.
yeah, I've just read
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah, because this one is completely different. They tell you how to pitch it, like what's your pitch line gonna
Yeah.
be, like when you're pitching it to big production
Mhm.
houses, like how is it gonna look and what are you gonna work on and how do you write a screenplay and all those things. I'm like, yeah, is it the same? So that's interesting. And is it by the same author?
No, I
No,
think
it's a different author.
they just took the same concept, but then they like applied it to
It's called Save the Cat.
yeah, it's called Save the Cat. I think the person is Jessica something.
Okay.
She wrote the Save the Book Cat version.
Book cat version. Awesome. Um, recently you also like you're a very creative person. I got to know because like one of the book thing, and then you got selected for graduation speech.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
So it happened very fast. I think you were there when I was like writing it. I wrote it in about a day and a half. And then I was like, I'm just gonna submit it and see if I get in. Or I wanted it to I think you will be there during graduation, right? So you'll be able to hear it. But it was just something that I was like, I'm gonna try, and if I don't get in, then I don't get in. But I wrote it, it's not like a personal story of mine. It was something that I felt um it was an old story that I've heard before, and I thought it would be useful for people like at graduation to hear it. So that's what I wrote it about, and then I got selected. So
How many
th-
people were there like in the thing to get selected? Like out of how many?
I think there was actually not that many. So maybe like 25 people.
Still a lot, yeah.
So not that many. Someone said they wrote their graduation speech based on Taylor Swift lyrics, and I think that would have been much cooler, but I guess they wanted something more professional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not I know the gist of it, but I've not heard your complete speech.
Yeah.
I'll wait for the graduation day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely be there.
I also want to mention there's this thing called pitch wars. So, for people who are writing, if they once you have like written a book, you can submit it to this thing called Pitch Wars. It happens every year where a writer, like a published writer, will partner up with you
Mhm.
and they will help mentor your book, like how it can be better, like
Oh,
how it can be published.
and is it a paid thing or
No, it's like a free thing, but it's very, very highly competitive because a lot of people are submitting their books in order for mentorship.
and this happened once a year?
Yeah, every year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Online, virtually.
Okay.
Mm.
Interesting. It's a good thing. Do you remember the website of it at all?
It's called Pitch Wars.
Just Pitch Wars. Pitchwars.com. Okay. Okay. Cool. Pitchwars.com it is.
But there's a huge community of people that write on Facebook or anything that you can get people to proofread your write, not proofread it, like test read, beta read, sorry, beta read your book. So I've had people where I just felt so like I felt like my book was like not good at all. So I was like, I'm gonna ask people to read a few chapters of it and see like do they think it's like as good as I thought, or do they think it's really bad? And you can get just random people's opinion on your like different chapters.
And people do that?
Yeah.
Just voluntarily do that?
Yeah.
And aren't you scared like of getting your
Book.
things stolen?
Yeah, I've had that fear, but it doesn't happen that easy because you don't even give your whole book out, and they can take your idea and rewrite it, but that's so much work. Like, are they willing to take your project and like
spin it off
Yeah.
that version? Okay, okay, makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay. Yeah. And then you find those like beta people online and
Yeah.
stuff. Okay.
So they're just people that will read your book, and they don't even have to be. Some people are not even writers. They just want to read. Like they like reading, so they'll read your book and give you feedback. And you can do it on Google Drive, so that way you don't give them editing options. Like
Got
they
it.
can't even copy it. They just can write comments.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. Interesting. Um, I'm gonna get a little more personal here. Um, you are in relationship with a very good friend of mine, Vignesh. Um, and he's Indian, you're Indian, but he grew up in India and he's here. So is it still an interracial kind of couple thing? What is it like? Intercultural kind of couple thing between you two, like, because I was also in relationship with someone different culture altogether. um so yeah, like when I saw you two, I felt like, oh yeah, they should be like, from the same place, so there's is not much difference, but based on what you were telling me last time, it didn't sound like that.
Yeah, so I remember if we go like very back 40 minutes ago, I said like I'm more Indianized, right? A lot of American born people here would, I don't think they would date someone from India because they just don't think they have that connection. But I like when I met Vignesh at university, I felt like, oh, like this person is like really amazing person. And we connected a lot on different things outside of culture. And one of the things though is we do speak the same language, but he says I like don't he says I don't speak it that well, but at least I can understand what his parents are saying, or I can basic communication, I can survive off of that. So I think that part is a little like a plus and advantage, but I do think there are some cultural differences that at times like do clash. Like in the beginning of a relationship, you don't notice it, but like after a while, like those cultural differences are like it seems like they're like the biggest stuff. Like for example, like I was asking you a couple days ago like about the lights. You were like, do you like fluorescent light or orange light? Like I can only have orange light and he wants fluorescent light. And I feel like fluorescent light makes me feel like I'm out of school, right? And I think like in India, a lot of people use fluorescent lighting everywhere, and they're so used to that. So it's like these small things that become like it's not huge, it's not like affecting our relationship, but it's just like the way we want to live. Like, do we have fluorescent lighting or yellow lighting? And so these small things can become large, but I feel like both of us are very like we compromise in certain things and we don't compromise in certain things. So we've been able to like navigate through those differences, but it can be very, very like if you don't know what you're walking into and you date someone that's out of your like not in the same race, or we're the same race. We're just like raised differently. So
And
yeah.
from the same city from India too.
Yeah, exactly. We speak the same language, but there's still so many differences.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I completely agree that on that. Like for me, like when I walked in relationship, it was mostly like learning by doing, and then for me, it was like not even from the same city. She was from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, even like you said, the small things like about saying sorry and thank you. It's a huge difference. Like if I miss that, just be like, wait, am I a slave or something? Like it's for us, it's for as coming from India, we're not used to saying like all those things. It's not that we're not grateful, it's just we're not used to it.
Yeah.
But here, like, you say sorry and thank you so many times that they're used to it. So
Yeah.
it's always like being mindful and trying to reach the middle ground and making things work.
And it's not that you're wrong or someone else is wrong. It's just that's their fundamental, like, how we were raised. Like,
Right.
and if just like suddenly having to change that for either parties is really hard.
Hmm.
I always feel like there are certain things, like, if it's really important to you, then you shouldn't compromise on it. But if it's things that you feel like, okay, like, that makes them happier. So, of course, I'll just say thank you and please, like, that's not really hurting me in
Yeah.
any way.
Hmm.
So, those kind of things, like the small ones are okay, but if it's like large differences, then it's harder to it's harder to navigate. But those differences can also be the reason, like, you have so much fun. Like, some person could be very introverted or extroverted, not relating to culture or anything, but that can make someone's life more vibrant and colorful for the introverted person. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that yeah, that's a pretty good insight about the couple things. Just so many things came to my head.
Yeah.
Anyways, in US, I know like this is what again most of my knowledge comes from movies, and sometimes I even hear people talk.
Basically American Ragu. Your knowledge has to be half from here,
Half from here,
half
from
from
here.
movies.
Yeah, probably. People move out of their house at 17 or 18 here, right?
Yeah.
And then they try to have their own life and then they carry on with their own life. So here in US, the way the kids look at their parents or look after their parents is completely different than in India, right? I always lived with parents. Like if I was in India, I would have 32 years old, I would have still been living
Yeah.
with my mom and dad and stuff. It's not a big thing.
Mhm.
It's like kind of weird if I don't live, right? If I say no, I want my own space. I'm single and I want my own space. It's kind of weird. Um, so my relationship with my parent is different versus someone who's here. So how is your relationship with your parents?
So I felt really like an outlier because I lived with my parents for undergrad. Like when everyone else was like ready to get out of the house and go to college, I was like, no, I don't I don't want to do that. Like I just want to live at home. And so I stayed for undergrad at my parents' house. But then when it came to like the part that really like wanted pushed me to leave at first was the topic of like arranged marriages. So back then I wasn't in a relationship. So when that topic came, like that was where I was like the Americanized side of me was like, no, 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 like that's not happening. I was like, okay, time for me to leave the house. And
So arranged marriage instigated you to leave the
that, that honestly was my trigger to like, okay, you need to go live out on your own, figure out what you're doing, and uh start like I've never lived by myself before, right? So I was like, this is the push to do it. And then I feel like for like American people, it was like completely different. But like I see that there's a lot of like loneliness here compared to India. But you can be lonely in a group of like a group of people too. So it's very confusing for me to like like I've seen both lifestyles. I'm like, which one is better? Like I always ask myself that because maybe I potentially want to move back, right? So I always like question like what are things that are better here? What are things that are better there? But people leave the house and then they don't like they get married and then they move out and they see some people see their parents like a lot, which I see is very rare, but a lot of people like they visit their parents like twice a year or a few and it's not even because they're so far away. It's because they just like that's how the relationship is. Like for Thanksgiving and Christmas, we'll see each other. And they like to lead that private life. And even on a show, I saw like having your mother-in-law live in the same house with you is like so absurd. Like
Yeah.
1 or 2 weeks, like that's like the max that is like acceptable. After that, it's just like you're overreaching. Like and that is so different in India where you could
Right.
just any time is welcome, you know?
Right. I mean, in India, like if you go traditional Indian route, like the girl comes into the house and she lives with the mother-in-law, like as
Yeah.
the son and the like her husband, her mom,
Mhm.
like stuff, right? It's a pretty common thing there.
I don't know, I have very mixed feelings about it. I yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I always like for me it always is very interesting to learn about different cultures and like I'll tell you an example. I think I've told an example of like um when I was at my very good friend's place when I was in college. I used to go to his house like for Thanksgiving or any long weekends. He was very kind enough to take me to his house, and his parents loved me. I loved his parents. I used to cook them good Indian meals and serve them food. And one of the days we were sitting on the dining table, and then they were asking about Indian culture, and they were trying to learn from me and stuff. So they're like, okay, say you get married in India,
Yeah.
and what happens to the girl? I'm like, "Yeah, she'll come and live with me." She's like, "Where will you be living?" I'm like, "I'll be living with my parents." He's like, "Why will you be living with your parents?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"My parents are old. I have to look after them."
Yeah.
He's like, "Are they that old that they cannot do anything?" I'm like, "No, but still, it's like, for me, it's a thing, like where you live. If I go to India, I'm gonna live with my parents. I'm not gonna live alone." So then he asked, "Oh, if you get married, your wife will come." Yeah, I'm like, all of us will live together. So the dad, he was trying to be funny, but he literally got a gun, put it on thing. He's like, this man is good, but don't learn that aspect from this guy. He was trying to be funny,
Yeah.
but he was like kind of serious too. He's like, no, if Cameron, if you get married, you're gonna have your wife and
Separate.
Yeah, yeah, we love you, but we don't want you in here.
Yeah.
It's I felt like that's such a huge difference, like in culture. Like I don't know what is right or wrong. There's nothing right or wrong. I believe it's just like the way we grow up.
Mhm.
I feel like most of the decisions or whatever we go through in life or whatever we say or whatever we tend to do in life is mostly comes from our previous experiences and the way that we are brought up in what culture that we are brought
Mm,
up in.
I definitely agree. It's like the parents don't want it and the kids don't want it here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. It's both
Yeah.
the side. Yeah, yeah, true. um
I feel like here, after a certain age, like people put their parents in senior homes. Like that's very common here. I think some people do that in India as well, like around the world. But
mhm.
I don't. Majority of people, like if you have grandparents and stuff, they live with you. And I just imagine myself as a grandmother. Like I wouldn't want to be in a senior home, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's just how the culture is here. Like who like having a grandma or grandpa is like a large financial and it's like a burden
Yeah.
because everyone goes to work and then the grandma and grandpa will be like at home alone and just a whole process of all of that is very, very different here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Switching gears a little, what is what is one thing or a few things that you've always believed is true in your life, but later you figured out it wasn't?
Ooh. Let me think. That I felt like was true.
You've for most part of your life you felt like, yeah, that's how it was, but then like something happened in your life or you came across someone, you said, wait, like that's not actually true.
So this is really weird, but I used when all throughout high school, whenever I used to think one of the reasons why I didn't want arranged marriage is because my parents would set me up with a brown guy, right? So I always felt like every brown guy was my brother. Like they were like a brother to me. Like there's no way that I could see them as a husband or something. And that was I had that concept in my head for a long time where I saw brown people as my like brothers or relatives. And maybe to be honest, if you look down the family tree, like all like since we have so many arranged marriages, we're probably like somehow all
Somehow
interrelated.
yeah.
Maybe the whole world is actually connected, but that was like a conception I had. And I think that only changed senior year of undergrad where
Wow, until then you were thinking all
yeah,
wow.
I would it's so bad, but I would get so disgusted because I'd be like, "Oh, I couldn't even think of being in a relationship with a brown guy because I thought like they would feel like a brother sister relationship
But what made you think that way?
because I felt like they were all the same. Like maybe the people of crowd I was with, like they were all like the same. This is so, this is so bad, but that is how my thinking was for a very long. I don't answer you're looking for.
But that's a good answer. It's a good answer, but
Once I started grad school is when I saw like so our grad school is like full of uh there's like no I don't think I've met another Americanized Indian in my masters. They're all from India, right? And I noticed like wow, like people are so different than what I'm used to. I guess I saw like in high school I had a the brown people I had friends that were all my friends, like they were all like Americanized Indians, and I kind of like grouped them in like one little circle of mine. But yes, people are all different. It was just like
yeah,
my perception. Yeah.
yeah. It's kind of like nice irony in life like that you ended up dating a brown guy. And then for me, I still remember with my first ever um like friend that I had, girlfriend that I had first ever, we used to talk on the phone. And then I still remember one night
Mhm.
we fought all night. The only reason is because she wanted to come to masters to US and I wanted to stay back in India,
Mm.
saying, "No, like what is wrong in India?" And then we had this whole debate, and
Mm.
then we
Here
fought.
you are.
Yeah, we didn't. Here,
Yeah.
here I am here,
Yeah.
and she's there in India. She
Yeah.
never left India.
This
It's like
makes
it's life is so funny when you think about it, right? It
yeah.
always surprises you. You just got to keep living and go with the flow and just be true to your heart. That's it. That's what I feel.
And just to be clear, I don't think of Vignesh as my brother. Just putting that out there.
Sure. Sure. Thanks for the clarification.
Oh gosh.
Well, it was amazing talking to you, Dhanasree. Like I said, like the whole thing was like everybody interviews people like after they're big or like their book is published and it's going out. But I felt like it was a really good opportunity for me to pick your brains even before you publish the book and the process that you go through. And when you're up there publishing, and I really with my full heart hope the book goes ahead and then you receive so many awards and we can look back here and say, yeah, I interviewed her. So that was like a selfish reason for me as well. And thank you for making it happen. Do you have any words for our viewers?
No, thank you so much. As you said, like people usually have podcasts with like celebrities and stuff. And even though I'm not a celebrity, I'm just like normal person. I feel like it was really fun like doing this. And maybe we'll have a part two when I actually have a book and or a movie or
A celebrity.
yeah, that's really cool.
No, the thing how I started this podcast also is like it was a funny thing. It happened everything within a week where Andrew said, "Wait a second, you're a movie director. Like you directed a movie. I directed a movie last year just on weekends." And he's like, "Wait a second, you do not have a YouTube channel. How come?" And then he was talking something about thing that I was like, kind of like asking a few questions. Like, you're a good moderator. Do you have good questions? And then I was like, wait a second. Okay. He was telling that I was driving back from Boca. And then I was like, okay, I want to start a podcast now that he said that because I'm a good moderator, but what am I going to talk about? And then only thing that came in my mind was like, what got me here is the people who I met. Most of my learnings is around the people who I met.
Mhm.
And I know that they have a lot. They might not be celebrated. I know that they have a lot to offer to the society. Just if I give them a platform, and how many more people listen. Like my podcast gets around 1,000 views every day. So I'm happy about that. I want to grow it more.
1,000 people are gonna listen to me speak.
More than that.
Oh my gosh. What did I say?
So
It's okay.
and then like it's like I've learned a lot from people around me. So I'm like, let me just put them and I'm gonna pick their brains and ask them like why they chose what they chose, just like what I did to you. And yeah, if I can create something, I can create something. If not, like have a personal satisfaction of at least trying it, like you said, writing something, right? So that's how this all started.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I think every person is so unique and has so much to offer,
Exactly.
and sometimes you just have to give them like the push to like unlock
Hmm.
potential.
Hmm. Yeah, awesome. All right. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much, viewers, for listening. And I'll come back again with another episode. Thank you.